Well, have you ever had a problem with your dog lunging and barking on leash walks? Well, if that's the case, you're not alone. It happens to a whole lot of people. In fact, you'd be impressed the number of folks who've already been pulled down and injured on leash walks because their dog's so out of control, and they come to me at that point. Don't wait that long. You don't need to struggle, and you don't need to stay home either. Your dog can learn to work for you and earn good things. They're never going to be perfect, are they, Miss America? This little girl, when we got her as a baby, she was 8 weeks old, and when we took her home, she had never even seen a car until she got into our car when we adopted her and brought her home. And she was an inveterate car chaser immediately. And we taught her how to do something different, what's called a response substitution. And so, if you find that this is information that you find helpful, maybe you would send me some hearts. And if you can hear me loud and clear, hit the wow button just so that we know that technically we've got this thing together. And you may have friends who've got problems with their dogs on leash walks, and go right ahead and tag them in the comment line, and they'll get this Facebook Live. So, I wanted to start by telling you a story. And interrupt me, by the way, if this kind of stuff has happened to you. But this was a lady who had a dog named Lola. Her name is Sandy. And Lola, about a 2-year-old Australian Shepherd, female, and she had a history of reacting to everything. And she was outside in the yard, and a leaf would blow across the grass, she would freak out. Any kind of movements and noises around the house just triggered her to react. And so we taught Sandy how to teach Lola, her girl, to work for a click by targeting, by touching her nose to a target stick. And look, here comes some people right now. Miss America, stand up for me, you silly girl. You standing? That's good. Oh, look. Yeah, you're... Look how silly you are. Let me show what we're going to do here. This is a good demonstration. Target, very nice. And then you get a treat because you're such a big girl. And look, more people are coming, so we can do that too. You notice how I have her oriented away from the arousal triggers, the people. And so I'm going to go ahead and I can turn a little bit, Miss America. Watch me. Target. Oh, look how good you are. Last week in this Facebook Live, we talked about teaching a dog how valuable a reinforcer and immediate marker, a clicker is. A clicker is this little gizmo here called a click stick, C-L-I-K-S-T-I-K. And this thing is handy because you can pull out the target stick anywhere and target, and she can learn that she's going to touch her nose to that, immediately get it reinforced by a click, and then she's watching me to get the treat. And sometimes when people are passing and I need to kill more time and keep her focused on me, then I might take a little bit longer to give her the treat. Now, when you're first training this stuff, you give that treat right away. Excuse me, but she's not new at this. This isn't her first rodeo. Doesn't mean she's perfect. She's been doing this her whole life. So here's what we did with Sandy and Lola. This way, honey. Well, this way. You can take a look at our friends. Will you come around this way, Miss America? This way. Sit. Oh, good. Where's my target stick? Look at those cute little dogs. You're not. Target. Oh, very good. Yeah, she's watching me instead of those other dogs. Oh, you're so good. And a lot of times it's valuable to create a lot of distance and to duck behind a visual barrier like a tree or a fence post. I'm sorry?
Hi to Alexandra.
Alexandra, hello. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this is helpful. So anyway, back to Sandy and Lola. Sandy got real serious about this, and she started training Lola, her dog, to touch the target stick inside her house where it was easy for the dog to do it. There were no distractions, nothing to freak the dog out. And yeah, you want to touch that target stick again, don't you? And she'd also, in separate times of twice a day, at separate times, she taught the dog what a click meant. In other words, you've done the job, you get the immediate reinforcer of the click, and it's immediate because if you have a clicker in your hand, whether it's one of these or another type of clicker, your thumb is already on the button when you give the command. so that you are ready. As soon as the dog's rear end touches the floor, for example, if you've given the sit command, you immediately push the clicker button, okay? Well, targeting is a handy thing because, let me stand up and show Miss America how we do this. What's nice is that if there's some person or another dog over there, I'm going to take my target stick and I'm going to point it over here and say target, and she touches it. She's oriented away from the arousal trigger. Oh, and here comes a little child on a bicycle. Oh, look how good you are. So sometimes it might be valuable if I just create a little distance. I'm going to move over here. I'm going to move over here. I'm out of frame now. Sit. Good. Target. Very nice. Good. Good. I hope you could see that. Oh, look how brave you are. And so then sometimes these kids stay put and then they go the other way. You can never tell, can you? So let's move around this way. Miss America, this way. That's a big girl. Run around this way. Good. Will you sit again? Oh, you're such a brave girl. All right. So, Sandy, I would teach Lola in the house until she was very good in the house, then took it inside the yard to the point where Lola could do this thing with a little bit of ambient noise in the yard and ultimately on leash walks. Well, you know, I emailed her a couple times following our consultations, and she said, no, Lola was doing better. So it was out of my mind. She hadn't emailed me. Apparently she was doing okay after we followed up a couple of times. Miss America, target. Good girl. And that little bicycle is noisy. You watching me? Oh, look how brave you are. I know, and I'm holding this treat, requiring her to pull it out of my fingers, because she's a dog. And she's a scavenger, and she'll pull a piece of meat off a carcass she finds in the wilderness, you know. There, you got the whole thing. Yeah. She associates this target stick with good things. You notice she's saying, is there another opportunity here, Dad? So, about a year later, I was in the specialty hospital where I see my behavior cases in Santa Fe, and I was coming out of the exam room, and there was Sandy with Lola. And I said, oh, Sandy, nice to see you. What are you doing here? She goes, well, we had to come in and see the dermatology specialist. And I said, well, how's it going with Lola? Well, I noticed that while I was talking with Sandy, just having a conversation, out of the corner of my eye, I would see Lola start to react to little sounds around the building. I mean, any little thing. And because Sandy had done this so many times, let me just stand up and I'll show you how I do this. All right, I hope you can still see me. She would notice what Lola was doing and just target and give her a target and a click, frankly, every 10 to 20 seconds almost. Because what this dog would do would be to start getting a little wiggy, starting to pay attention to some other issue, and she would just notice it beginning to happen. What she did that was so important was she did not allow Lola to get really highly ratcheted up before she gave this dog a chance to do something else besides being out of control. So she would catch this dog in the early stages of her ramp up and go target, and she would get this dog to do something else to work for her, knowing full well the dog would get immediately reinforced with a click followed by the treat. So how do we teach a dog to target? All right, well, I have a dog here who's been doing it all her life, but I'm going to show you how it's done. In this little Ziploc bag, I have, dogs know something about the sound of plastic, don't they? Trying to get in here. I've got a little dab of almond butter. There it is. So you get your target stick, and you could use your finger as a target stick. It doesn't have to be one of these click sticks. It just happens to be really handy. And I'm going to get a little dab of almond butter on this thing. Okay? And so you teach a dog to figure it out on her own is the best way. What you don't do is you don't bring the target stick toward her face and put it on her mouth, okay? Because you're doing the work. Your student needs to do the work, and your student needs to figure it out herself. This is called operant learning. And actually, we have this kind of thing in common with dogs. So if I hold this out near her, and I wait for her to figure out there's something tasty there, because she can smell the almond butter or peanut butter, then when she moves her face toward it, honey, will you sit, please? Thank you, darling. I'm going to capture the behavior. In other words, when her face touches it, I'm going to give the command. So I'm just going to bring it here, target. Oh, good. And the nice thing about peanut butter or almond butter is it's kind of gooey. And so as soon as she's had just a little brief taste of it, I'm going to pull it away because that gives me a chance to repeat it and do it again. So I'm going to bring it out here and I'm going to wait for her to go near it and then target, and I'm capturing the behavior. When she does the behavior, I put a name on it. Well, again, she already knows this thing, but then you can bring it back after several seconds and wait for her to figure it out again. Target, okay? And with one gob of peanut butter, you can get a lot of repetitions. Now, just like that clicker training we talked about in last week's Facebook Live, anything that you're training, you want to only have 2 training sessions per day and only 3 to 4 minutes each. If you do it longer, you think, well, why would I quit? Why don't I just keep going because this dog is enjoying it and she's having a good time and I can tell she's catching on. Well, the problem is you keep going until the dog's just tired and bored with it. And at that point, they come away with a less than enthusiastic association with that exercise. So you actually want to quit when the dog is just raring to go and having a wonderful time, and that's when you quit, and that's how you bring the stuff out again 12 hours later and this dog's all about it. And not only all those observations, we have research to show twice daily, 3 to 4 minutes each time, they learn much faster. So again, same thing, just bring it down here, let her discover it, target, and when she touches it, you give the command. And then gradually you go without the peanut butter or almond butter and you teach the dog, teach the dog that you're going to say target when she touches it, and then you can bring it a few inches away, wait for her to go for it, and when her nose touches it, you say target, and then a little further, and ultimately you'll find that you can bring it out there, give the target command, and she will touch it, okay? And then if you're clicker training as well, you can do that twice a day at different times, 3 to 4 minutes each time, and then when you're ready, you can combine them. So you have a dog then who will derail her attention from some other thing like a person or a dog on a leash walk and orient, target, good, toward the target stick. And then she gets an immediate reinforcer. And then after the click, of course, she's been getting the food off the end of the target stick, and then I'm going to give her the food. So
you have drag line indoors and tethered to belt.
all right, okay, we'll get there too. Thank you. So here's the other thing that many people forget or they just don't recognize is that when you're on a leash walk or you have visitors inside your house and you have you notice that your dog is beginning to ramp up, and you try to be as good at this as Sandy was with Lola, her Australian Shepherd, to the extent where you are derailing your dog early in the ramp up of arousal. Don't wait until you've got a full-on wild, chaotic situation, because your dog can't learn anything then, and all you're doing is struggling with your dog. And that's the whole point of what we're trying to prevent here, is just put an end to that nonsense, okay? So always remember that, number one, we ignore unhealthy behaviors. Always ignore, because the dog comes away believing that it earned the resource of an interaction with his or her great leader, that's you, if you respond. Dogs don't believe they're entitled to an interaction. So if you respond, pardon me, your dog is sure they did what you wanted. So if your dog's lunging and barking and snapping and all that nonsense, and you are saying, stop it, cut it out, and reprimands and all that business, your dog says, well, clearly my leader wants this, because no way would I be getting those interactions, would I be earning them if the leader didn't want that. So you have to ignore. Pardon me, a bit of dust blowing around here. The other thing that's really important is that let's make it easy for your dog to succeed. Set them up for success by creating distance from the arousal trigger, the other dog, the person. Because with greater distance, pardon me, there will always be less arousal, okay? So if I see somebody coming along the path and my dog is known, thank you, Carolyn, to react badly, much better, thank you, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create distance. So I'm going to walk this way, Carolyn, if you just follow me with the camera. And we're just pretending that there's somebody there, and we're just going to walk this way, hon. That's a big girl. I'm getting tangled up. Sit, nice. Now her rear end is toward where the person or the dog would be, and I'm going to say target. She earns the immediate click, and then she gets the food reward. Big girl. Hold on here. I've got myself caught up in my... I'm going to have a technical difficulty if I'm not careful. There we go. So, always create distance. And if you have the opportunity, if there's a visual obstruction, for example, if somebody were coming along here, Miss America, I might duck behind this bush, and I might stand with my legs between her and the people or the other dog. This is called body blocking. If I'm making it hard for her to see them, I've got a visual obstruction of some kind, I'm using my body as a visual obstruction, and then I'm going to say, target, good girl. And I'm going to use the target stick in a direction away from the arousal problem, the trigger, okay? So that's really the essence of that. Okay, this way, honey. So you can do this in other places too. For example, if you have visitors, you know, your dog is really wild and crazy at the, did I pull on that thing with a cord? Sorry about that. Hope I didn't make anybody sick. Let me give a word. Okay, here comes somebody on a bicycle, and this girl can be really bad about bicycles, Maddie. So I'm anticipating. Target, good girl. And the reason that this was valuable is, see, she just noticed the bicycle, but she's focused on earning the click and the treat for having targeted. I saw the bicycle before she did, and ideally, you're preempting all of these things. All right, so speaking of preempting, you're expecting a visitor. So your dog has a history of going wild when people come to the door. Boy, raise your hand if you have that problem, right? So put the dog in the other room before they arrive. Anticipate, because hearing the doorbell and seeing them invade the dog's territory, the dog has no way to escape if they consider visitors scary monsters. It is a totally set up for the dog to freak out. So give the dog a break. Put your dog in the other room, close the door. And then if your friends come in, let them sit down, have a glass of tea, and when they're sitting, the dog perceives them as smaller and less scary. You'd be impressed at how much fear is involved in these apparently ferocious reactions that dogs have. They're trying to scare off the monster that's going to eat them alive. It's almost every case it's like that. And there's some territorial behavior added into those as well, maybe some protective behavior, but fear is huge. Okay? So we've made it easy for your dog in the beginning by putting her in the other room before the folks come in the door, and they're sitting down and appear smaller, and then you can bring your dog out on leash. And if you want to, you notice, let me show you what I have here. Everybody probably has these around the house, little lightweight carabiners. You can get them at the check stand, at the pharmacy, whatever. This one came from a veterinary medication company. Did I pull the camera again? No, sorry about that. So I've got it on my belt loop here. And then if I have Miss America inside the house and I can tether her to my belt by snapping the handle of the leash in the carabiner. Okay? Let me get the darn thing to work for me. There we go. Okay? So if I'm walking around and I have guests and I'm concerned she might lunge at somebody, well, she won't get very far because she's tethered to me. Just another way of using a leash to your advantage. But in those situations, I'm always ready. If I have a dog who I might be concerned is going to take a swing at somebody, safety should always be first. A dog who might injure somebody should never be near anybody like that. But if the dog just might react and she's well trained to target, I can say target, and she touches her nose, earns that click, and then I'm going to fish a treat out of my treat bag. Ooh, she says, I'm ready for that treat. There. Look how big you are. You're excellent, aren't you? Does anybody have any questions? Has any of this ever happened to anybody, like a dog who wigs out when people come in the house? Boy, it isn't much fun, is it? And you know, it's interesting. One of the things I've learned just from my study during my behavior residency, and it's about more than just behavior modification. Here comes some people. A little child.
Let her feel a little bit. Let her get a little reactive.
Well, okay, I can do that. So if one thing that I've learned is that, you know, dogs and humans, there are some big differences, right? There's certainly some similarities. But one of the things that I have learned is that in life, people say things that they shouldn't say, don't they? They say inflammatory things, contentious things. It may be somebody you're having a conversation with. It could be somebody, it could be the news media, for heaven's sake. You know, some people, you can get so cranked off watching the news that you can start arguing with the people on TV. Well, here's the thing. What I've learned in my own life is that if I ignore inappropriate comments from others, comments that might trigger me to get agitated, and I've learned to ignore it, not only do I let myself off the hook with carrying the burden of that angst, and I feel better and more relaxed, but by not responding to something that another person says directly to me, what I have not done is validated their inappropriate behavior. And I'm free of it, and they don't have to stay fixated on it either. Even people who say and do inappropriate things, whose behavior could stand some improvement, those people can learn from us. And if we ignore that nonsense, but then be nice and reinforce when they do good things, just like our dogs, then nobody's been validated for anything but the right behaviors. So ignoring is huge. In fact, with all the things we talk about with giving a dog a response substitution, in other words, a behavior that she can engage in instead of reacting inappropriately, setting her up for success by creating distance, ducking behind a visual barrier, body blocking. We can do all those things right, teach her to do something else, target, click, reinforce with food. All of those things are really valuable, but the most important of all of it is ignoring behavior you don't want, because dogs are so tuned in to earning reinforcers and resources from their leader, and they believe that our responses are resources. So don't give that out if you don't want to see the behavior repeated. Last point, Monday afternoon the 20th at 1 o'clock, I'm going to do a virtual consultation. Call it a webinar if you like, but it's a meeting of other pet parents whose behavior problem with their dogs is aggression between their family dogs. And if you have that problem, or you know somebody who does, then contact me on my Facebook page, and I will sign you up, and you can attend. There's going to be a fee for it, but it's going to be really helpful, in part because I'm going to give you the basics and give individual help for the pet parents who talk to me. It's going to be on Zoom, and there'll be a conversation. They can ask questions, and I'll share information and give you a real honest-to-goodness consultation, but hey, we're social distancing, right? Look at all those people. Miss America, Target, very nice. You can have another biscuit. Well, you've been so good today. Here, have a biscuit. Look how good you are. I know it, honey. You're lovely. So, aggression between family dogs, very, very common. So again, be sure to tag your friends if they've got that problem, and contact us on Facebook, and we'll set you up for that, and we're going to do it at 1 o'clock on Monday. And Ann, thank you for coming. I so appreciate you being here all the way from Tulsa, Oklahoma. So, if you like what you're seeing here, if this is valuable to you and you can't always tune in, you can subscribe to my website. Just go to Dr. Jeff Nichol, drjeffnichol.com, and you can subscribe at the bottom of the homepage, and you can sign up with your email address. There's no cost, of course, and when you do, by the way, I'll send you at no charge my first aid, pet first aid and CPR guide for pets. I suggest you print it out and stick it to the fridge. It's got the basics of what to do in case of poisonings, injuries, all manner of things. Severe diarrhea, vomiting, has all that in there. And then every week in your email inbox on Tuesday mornings, you will get the Facebook Live from the week before if you didn't have a chance to tune in, and you'll get my weekly blog. It's my weekly question answer column that is printed in the Albuquerque Journal. It's questions, answers about dogs and cats, and about behavior problems and other physical disorders. We did one recently on COVID-19 in pets and what that can mean. And one.
Debbie Potter's here, and she said Mishu has some homework to do.
Yeah, Debbie, wonderful. Mishu is a very sweet girl who reacts on leash walks, and it is challenging. And these things, I don't mean to make these things look easy. These are so difficult sometimes. And Miss America here is 12 years old, and she's still getting a little better. She never reached a point where she stopped improving. She's continuing to improve. So she makes it look easier. But when she was 6 months old, it was challenging. And so we had to do a lot of ignoring and creating a lot of distance. And then give her opportunities to earn good things, work for her leader, eyeball to eyeball, leader, subordinate. And those other creatures passing by, we've abandoned them. They mean nothing. We don't correct, we do something else and make it easy. Well, that's all I have to report. Any questions anybody else has? You can sure put them on Facebook. I'm really glad you shared a little time with me and Miss America here. Here, girlfriend, come on around this way and say goodbye to our friends. Can you come around this way? A little further. Okay, say goodbye. Say goodbye to our friends. All right, thank you, and be safe, and wear your mask if you're going to be close to anybody.